The Senate climate bill is finally out. Find out what's in store for offshore drilling. We talk one-on-one with co-author John Kerry about the legislation. Also on Capitol Hill, those oil spill fail-safe devices turn out to be anything but. And is Europe moving toward a bigger cut in greenhouse gas emissions? The EU Climate Commissioner speaks out.
From the Energy News Center in Washington, D.C., this is the Energy Report with Susan McGinnis.
Good afternoon, I'm Susan McGinnis. Thanks for joining us for the Energy Report. After months of delay, Senators John Kerry and Joe Lieberman have revealed their Senate climate bill. It's called the American Power Act, originally to be authored by Kerry, Lieberman, and Lindsey Graham. It was released today without Graham lending his support. Backed by leaders from the private and environment sectors, this bill is designed to cut greenhouse gases 17% by 2020. Lieberman said the legislation would price carbon to reflect what he calls its real costs, and it allows coastal states to veto offshore drilling plans under certain conditions. But Kerry admits, in his words, the co-authors faced some painful decisions in drafting the bill. Today, Clean Sky's Tyler Suiters talked with John Kerry about the specifics of the bill and the effect the recent Gulf oil spill has had on the legislation.
How has that affected your bill itself and the offshore provisions that are included?
Well, I think anybody in public life would be stupid and crazy not to take note of what has happened in the Gulf, Mexico. I mean, we have a terrible oil spill down there, and it's injuring a lot of our resources. We need to know why that happened. How did it happen? How can we prevent it again from happening in the future? And we take that step in this bill as a first step. We also give states more power to be able to make a decision about what happens to them if they're at risk in that process.
The measure is said to face bleak prospects because of disputes over offshore drilling and other issues. Tyler also asked Senator Kerry about his bill's nuclear title, which does stand in stark contrast to the climate bill that passed the House last summer. You can catch the entire interview with John Kerry on the American Power Act here at cleanskies.com. Congressman Henry Waxman says his Energy Committee's investigation into the Gulf oil spill reveals that a key safety device, the blowout preventer, had a leak in a crucial hydraulic system that probably made it inoperable. In a hearing today on Capitol Hill, Waxman said the well itself had failed a key pressure test fewer than 4 hours before the explosion on April 20th, letting explosive methane gas to enter the well. Waxman and Michigan Democrat Bart Stupak, who chairs the panel's investigation subcommittee, said batteries in one of 2 blowout preventer activation pods were found to be dead.
The more I learn about this accident, the more concerned I become. This catastrophe appears to have been caused by a calamitous series of equipment and operational failures. If the largest oil and oil service companies in the world had been more careful, 11 lives might have been saved and our coastlines protected.
Stupak said there are also indications some key equipment might not have been designed, installed, or maintained correctly. He also pointed to a 2001 engineering analysis that identified 260 failure modes serious enough to require raising the BOP to the surface to fix it. Ranking Minority Member Joe Barton, he's a Texas Republican and a supporter of offshore drilling, said he assumed that modern drilling equipment is designed to handle the kind of blowout that occurred in the Gulf.
We don't know what happened, but my assumption is, and if my assumption's wrong, then we have to reassess the entire OCS drilling program, that if the technology had worked and the people had responded or had time enough to respond, even though you had the accident, it would have been contained, it would have been shut off. Am I wrong about that?
Well, the White House announced it's joining congressional efforts to ensure the oil industry pays the full costs of spills with new legislation to raise that liability cap and do so retroactively.
The President is sending up to Congress a legislative package that will lift the caps on damage, increase the ceiling on the amount of money that can be expended on recovery per incident from the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund, and provide other authorities and funding to help the federal government respond swiftly to this crisis.
The $118 million bill includes $29 million to create a separate federal safety enforcement office that was proposed just yesterday by Interior Secretary Ken Salazar. The bill adds a 1 cent per barrel to the excise tax for a spill liability fund, raising it to 9 cents. Meanwhile, it's BP's latest best chance to stop the oil leaks spewing hundreds of thousands of gallons of oil into the Gulf each day. A second, smaller container has now reached the sea floor, but it hasn't yet been placed over the blown out well. Crews want to avoid the same icy, slushy buildup that thwarted the first attempt. They plan to pump heated water and methanol into the concrete box so ice won't build up. Undersea robots will position the box over the gusher by Thursday. Global oil demand growth this year will be slightly lower than previously expected. IEA is lowering its forecast this year by 220,000 barrels a day, the agency's first big cut in a year. This is based on a weaker than expected oil consumption in emerging markets and revisions to 2008 demand data. Oil demand has been stronger than anticipated in North America and the Pacific, but somewhat weaker in Asia and the Middle East. Global demand this year is expected to be 86.4 million barrels a day, a nearly 2% rise over last year. EU Climate Commissioner Connie Hedegaard says she'll present a document within weeks showing how Europe can move to a 30% cut in greenhouse gas emissions by 2020. According to the European Commission's analysis, the world recession made a 30% target easier to achieve than original calculations suggested. Hedegaard says a move to raise the target could be the only way to boost Europe's carbon price to levels high enough to drive green investment. She admits economic problems in Europe could make a change very difficult. She said it's not an easy time to discuss money that comes out of the public purse right now. North Korea says its scientists have created a nuclear fusion reaction to produce energy. The announcement generated immediate doubt among experts, some of whom call the claim absurd, saying North Korea can't even produce enough electricity to light the country at night. North Korea's nuclear program is largely based on Russian Soviet-era technology from the 40s and 50s. Observers say North Korea's government routinely makes big claims of achievement on the birthdays of its leaders that are never substantiated. This one marks the birthday of Kim Il-sung. Google says it's bought a nearly $40 million stake in 2 North Dakota wind farms. This is Google's first direct investment in a renewable energy project. The NextEra Energy farms include 33 turbines generating 50 megawatts just north of Bismarck and 80 turbines that generate 120 megawatts in Griggs and Steele counties. The American Wind Energy Association rates North Dakota as having the nation's greatest wind energy potential, though it ranks only 10th in wind power output. Let's take a look now of some goings-on around the Beltway tomorrow. At noon, the Environmental Law Institute has a discussion of its Energy Star labeling program. It'll focus on the impacts to energy efficiency and the roles of consumers, investors, and the manufacturing bottom line. That's at ELI on 2000 L Street Northwest. 2 p.m., Robert Bryce, managing editor of Energy Tribune and a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, talks at the American Enterprise Institute about his new book, Power Hungry, the Myths of Green Energy and the Real Fuels of the Future. That is the Energy Report. We'll see you again tomorrow with your latest energy news. For any suggestions or comments regarding our programming on Clean Skies News, we'd like to hear from you. You can email us at contact@cleanskies.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. From all of us here in the Energy News Center, have a great day.